Hello and welcome to Tax Matters. I'm Chamaka Ohaochi. Last episode, we began a conversation with our viewers on the nature and form of taxation in Nigeria, especially with regard to the utilization of so-called federally collected taxes. You'll recall the point about the distribution formula amongst and between federal, state and local governments and a few other matters in between. Population, derivation, equality of states, cost of collection, and so on. When whatever is the share of the federal government or any state or local government gets into its coffers, what does it do with it? That is the focus of today's episode of Tax Matters. How is revenue from taxes collected from individuals and corporate bodies put to use in health, in education, in transport infrastructure, in housing, and many other sectors? We have with us on this episode the Minister of Works and Housing, Mr. Babatunde Raji Fashola, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, who is going to talk about what has been done in the last 7.5 years under his watch at the Ministry of Works and Housing. But before we bring on the Honorable Minister, we want to talk about social contracts. What is social contract? Contract between who and who?
Maybe we can just start by saying defining what a tax is. Now, a tax is a compulsory contribution to government revenue levied on individuals or corporations on their income, on their assets, or their consumption. So, for example, you can pay personal income tax, company income tax, capital gains tax, even the electronic money transfer levy, even though that is like a levy, is a transaction tax, and importantly, the value-added tax, which is on consumption. So, all these taxes are paid because there is a social contract between the government and the citizens that come together to form a nation. So this social contract requires that the citizens pay for running the government, and the government then provides certain services that only the government can provide, and in some cases it also provides services that others can provide, but the government has decided that they are too important to be left to the market. So for example, we all need common defense. So we need one military for Nigeria, and it has to be funded. If today we say that the number of police officers, hypothetically, the ones we have, are not enough, and we want to expand the police force, for example, by 100,000 more police officers, we cannot fund it if we don't have enough taxes to expand the size of the police. Now, if we want to increase by just 100,000, that will require at least an additional expenditure of about 200 billion naira a year. So if we don't collect taxes, we will not be able to do that. And then the police, they have to be equipped with modern gadgets and communication, information technology tools that will help them do their work more effectively. If we don't have the funds by way of taxes, we will not be able to do that. So there is a direct link. And that is why when you look at countries that have collapsed, one of the first things you see that law and order has broken down. And that is because they cannot even fund the basic services of providing security. It is one of the most fundamental functions of government, to provide the security that citizens need, not only to carry out their businesses, but to also feel comfortable going out and living their lives. Secondly, we need a good environment with clean air, and that is a pure public good. If I enjoy clean air, or I enjoy the services of the military giving me defense, it doesn't stop any other Nigerian from enjoying that. And that is why it has to be done by the government, because it is a public good. If you allow it to the private sector, it cannot work. So that is why government collects taxes in order to be able to provide all these services. But importantly, in our lives, we also do businesses. So we need to be sure that there is law and order, and our property rights will be protected by the judiciary. Again, the judiciary is another pure public good. You cannot have a private judiciary. It can be only run by government, but it has to be funded, because the staff of the judiciary they have to be paid. So that is why we all pay taxes, so that we get these services that we need in order to run our businesses and have a good life. And that is the social contract that we have. We elect our public officers who then ensure the public servants, like the staff of FIRS, are held accountable for the jobs that we've been given to do. So that is how this cycle works, with the citizens at the top of the ladder.
Mrs. Frances Okorafor is the Director of Revenue Accounting Department at the FIRS. She speaks about the contribution of funds accruing into the Federation accounts, which, as we also told you in the last episode, are shared at the monthly meetings of the Federation Accounts Allocation Committee. In recent times, we have noticed with delight the rising and huge percentages of taxes collected by the FIRS as contributions to the FAC pool account. Now, please give us a scorecard or an idea of these contributions in the last 24 months.
Okay, FAC is a short form, of Federation Accounts Allocation Committee. The focus is on non-oil, really, because of recent PPT, as we see it, has been on the decline. But focus is on non-oil, which FIRS is actually forging ahead at the forefront. The contribution to FAC is, an aspect of the budget that is given to us. I can go through 2021, to date, or further, 2020. For 2020, the FAC contribution for all the revenue agencies, came to 7.3 trillion, out of which FIRS contributed 4.5 trillion. But when you look at that year, the budget for FIRS, for FAC, is actually 4.3 trillion, and we contributed 4.5 trillion, which is over 100%. And when you look at it vis-a-vis contribution by FIRS against the other agencies, we contributed over 62.1%. And if you go over to 2021, the other agencies contributed 8.9 trillion, and FIRS contributed 5.2 trillion. For 2022, I will just give you from January to October. For the contributions of other agencies, it came to 11.7 trillion, and FIRS out of that contributed 7.7 trillion, and that is, over 66%. So you can see it's on the rise, and FIRS is at the forefront because we know the importance of funds to government.
When distributable funds reach the different Federation accounts, what happens next?
We have, accounts that is called pool accounts. For petroleum profit tax, there's a pool account, that you call PPT pool account. For CIT, you also have, a Federation account, which includes CIT, CGT, withholding tax. It goes into that account. And you have VAT, pool account. The new electronic money transfer levy has also an account. And then you have stamp duty account. And you also have education pool account, and then NIFDAC. All that are accounts that end up in CBN. So from there, there are segregations. The ones that go to the Federation, which are shared by the 3 tiers of governments. The one that goes to education, which is the tertiary institution and all that they use. And then NIFDAC as well.
Interesting. Now, still on processes and steps, what happens at FAC? Who are the stakeholders at FAC? And how does the monthly meeting of this committee impact the day-to-day lives of every Nigerian?
In that committee, there are stakeholders. And the stakeholders in the first place is the three tiers of government. You have the federal government, you have the state government, you have the local government. But there are also members of the FAC, which includes revenue generation agencies, which FIRS is one of them. You have NNPC now, NNPC Limited. You have Nigeria Customs. You have a Ministry of Mines and Steel. You have now NURC. It used to be DPR. And then you have observers. The Ministry of Finance is the minister is the chairman of that committee. And you have the secretary, the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Finance. You also have the members of post-revenue mobilization, that is post-mortem members. And these post-mortem members, include, but not limited to, the three tiers of government and revenue agencies. So you have other observers, from ministries and all that. But basically, you have the states commissioners, the accountant general commissioners. Now, how does it work? There are two aspects of that FAC. You have the technical, people, and then you have the plenary, section. The technical section is made up of the accountant generals of the federation and the accountants generals of the states and the revenue generating agencies and some observers. There, all the money that is collected, from the revenue generating agencies, to the federation account and VAT and all other accounts, except the education account and the NIFDAC, they are reconciled. It's a technical section. Every agency that collects revenue, comes in. That is Customs, NNPC, Limited now, the FIRS, NUC, and all that. They all come with their money. It's like a purse. This is how much I have collected. Whether it is all collected or whether there are some that are on transit, you'll be able to say. So all that money, all that report is looked at critically by these members. And then when they are okay with it, they okay it to go to the plenary section where the commissioners are there. They will ask a lot of questions. The OAGF will now have the report, because OAGF is the one that holds this meeting. With the report, they now take it to the plenary section. So the plenary will look at that report because it needs to be approved before sharing. They look at the reports. If there are things that they are not satisfied with, they will ask questions. If there are things they think that will be looked at again, they will suggest. So when all that is looked at and there is satisfaction with every report, and then with the presentation of what OAGF brings, because remember, they are the ones that holds the meeting. At the end of the day, there will be a communique. So that communique is looked at, from the statutory collection to VAT and electronic money transfer. It will be looked at, and if it's okay for them, they will now say it's okay for sharing, and it is shared by the three tiers of government. Now, the statutory allocation, there are different, percentages of sharing. That excludes, VAT. So for the states now, the sharing will be, for federation government, 52.68% of that money goes to the federal government. Then for the state governments, it's 26.72%. For the local government, it is now 20.60%, and there's 13% derivation. That goes to oil producing states. Now for VAT, the formula is also different. So for VAT, you have the federal government having 15% of the sharing. And then the states having 50%, because, collection of VAT comes from the states. And there's an attribution for each state, where it is coming from. So 50% is shared, to all the states. And then the local government takes 35%. For electronic money transfer, there's also a sharing formula, which is what is stated in the Finance Act of 2020.
It is an offense punishable by a fine of 10 million naira and or imprisonment for any agency of the federal government other than FIRS to demand for books or returns for the purposes of tax. It is also an offense to carry out the function of assessment, collection or enforcement of tax, or pay any portion of tax revenue to any person or into any account other than the relevant accounts designated by the Constitution or relevant laws of the National Assembly. It pays to pay your tax. This message is brought to you by the Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS.
There you are. The next logical step is to look at what happens when each tier of government collects its share from or at FAC. What does it do with it? Mr. Babatunde Raji Fashola is the Minister of Works and Housing at the Federal Republic of Nigeria. He has been on that seat for the better part of 7 years now. So what has the federal government been doing with its share of revenue?
Let me summarize it this way. In the housing sector, directly in the Ministry of Works, we are building houses in 35 states. And so we have 35 construction centers where we are employing contractors, subcontractors, suppliers, laborers, artisans, skilled and unskilled labor, directly. Through our parastatals like the Federal Housing Authority and the Federal Mortgage Bank, Federal Housing Authority is going to deliver, I think, about 6,000 housing units nationwide this year. Federal Mortgage Bank is already commissioning close to 7,000 housing units in different parts of Nigeria. We have issued certificates of occupancy to over 6,700 people since I've been here. Some of those certificates have started coming back in terms of governors or president's consent. So there have been subsequent transactions. Those who get title now have access to credit. They are either selling or they are accessing mortgages. So I see requests by banks for perfection of mortgages. We have over 2,000 plus of those that we have approved. In the housing sector, we have the public buildings sector where we have completed 4 new federal secretariats which the president will commission soon in Nasarawa, in Bayelsa, in Oka, in Anambra, and in Zamfara State. We are progressing on Ikiti and Oshun, and we are about to start a few ones. These are fallouts of the creation of states program. But beyond that, we are maintaining 28 existing federal secretariats. We've done a renovation and rehabilitation of them. We've issued facility management and maintenance contracts that were not there before. So we've employed 28 different companies. First of all, each of those companies have employed at least 40 people to do facility management and maintenance, from electricians to plumbers to security men to gardeners to cleaners and so on and so forth. Those jobs were not there in 2015 when Buhari came, and we are sustaining them. They're long-lasting jobs. On the road side, well, we have over 13,000 kilometers of road under contract for rehabilitation, reconstruction, and so on, nationwide. This is captured in over 1,000 contracts that we are managing. We have, I think, 169 laboratories nationwide, because contrary to what people, well, I mean, some of the things people don't know, everything that goes into constructing a road must pass through a laboratory. You can't just put any sand, you can't put any water, you can't put any type of cement, you can't put any type of diesel, you can't put any type of asphalt. Asphalt must be delivered at a particular temperature throughout when it is used. So we have lab technicians nationwide operating. We have employed supervision consultants who supervise. Those are jobs who are benefiting from this. So through infrastructure, actually, we are just redistributing wealth in the economy. We have thousands of suppliers and subcontractors working for us. So as the resources come by taxation or by borrowing, which has to be paid back through taxation, we are putting it back to work for the people, creating jobs that existed and those that did not exist. And each one of those people who gets to work also pays taxes, either as a company back to us or as an individual back to the state.
Getting down to more specifics, this time on roads across the country.
If you look at the Kano to Maiduguri highway, that is an east-west crossing in the north. So it is 560 kilometers. We've virtually completed it except for the section in Kano. We have laid cable duct for fiber optic for digital communication ready. If you look at Akwanga to Makurdi, it's 220 something kilometers. That is the road that connects Abuja to Makurdi. Very critical road. Again, it's going to be delivered. The fiber optic ducting is being laid as it's being constructed. That's a new standard for roads by President Buhari across Nigeria. The Abuja Kano is also another such road. Lagos Ibadan, of course, Enugu Port Harcourt, the second Niger Bridge. I've talked about the Bodo Boni. Some of the roads we've opened, the Vandekea Ubudu Road. We are working now on the Calabar to Dupani Road that takes you into Alesi, Ugep, and all of that links the southeast to the north central of Nigeria. There is the, of course, Lagos, Ibadan, Oyo, Ogbomoso, Ilorin, Jeba. There is Bida, Lapai, Zungeru, Mina, Tegina, and then the Suleja Mina road. There are quite a number. There are dozens of roads. There is Mayobelwa to Jada, Sokoto, Tambuwa, Yauri, down to Kontagora, the Benin, Auchi, Okene, Lokoja, Abuja, Lokoja. There's Cham Numan that links Gombe to Taraba and that connects to a major sugarcane reserve and sugarcane processing plant in Taraba State. So there's a lot going on, and there is the Zaria Funtua Sokoto road, again a very strategic route. There's Shagamu to Benin. There is Enugu Onitsha and Enugu Port Harcourt. We are also working on a road, the road from Akwa Ibom that links Akwa Ibom and Abia.
Taxpayers' money in action. We are coasting home, and it is time for question of the week. As a law-abiding tax-compliant company owner, how do you acquire your tax clearance certificate at the click of a button? When you log on to www.firs.gov.ng, click on e-services. It will display list of items, then select Tax Pro Max. Once you click on Tax Pro Max, it will display list of items, then select ATCC. Once you click on ETCC, it will automatically take you to the next page, then click on Apply for TCC. Once you click on it, it will take you to the next page, then click on Tax Clearance Certificate, and it will take you to the Tax Clearance Certificate Request page. Then click on the assessment year that you want to print the TCC for, and then click on View. And voila, your TCC. Tax Clearance Certificate at the speed of sound. We'll leave you with this parting shot, again from Barrister Fashola.
Be a part of building this nation. Pay your tax. That is your contribution to helping to lift people out of poverty. That is your contribution to creating a shared prosperity. That is your contribution to creating a nation where everybody feels included.
End of discussion. Thank you for watching. See you next week.